Hello there, friends and enemies. My name is O'Shea, and welcome to the Mediocre Gaming review of Scorn. Releasing October 14th, 2022 for Xbox Series X and for PC, Scorn is an atmospheric horror game set in a H.R. Giger-like biopunk world. Like quite a few other video game enjoyers, I had been waiting for Scorn for quite a long time, even expecting it to come out back in 2017-2018 when it was first announced to have been coming out. In fact, the wait for Scorn had become so tedious and the updates for Scorn so infrequent that certain patrons of the original Kickstarter began to believe that Scorn was actually a scam. This led developer Ebb Software to release a full statement defending their first-time game by saying, "It's coming, trust us. We just had a lot of changes to our development cycle." Development cycle aside, people weren't really sure what to make of Scorn when the initial alpha trailers came out. Nevertheless, hype for Scorn was high, and it only got more high when we finally got a release date. And then a few years later, it got high again when we got an actual release date. So now that we've gone through some of the history of Scorn, what type of game is Scorn? I said earlier that it was an atmospheric horror game, but what exactly does that entail? Scorn throws you into an uninhabited and seemingly dying world and tells you absolutely nothing. You are meant to just explore and figure out what you're supposed to do as you go along. Scorn puts you into the position of a nameless, silent protagonist, going from their actual literal birth to what can only be presumed to be the gates of the afterlife. Over the course of the journey, you, the player, will solve some puzzles, you'll encounter some creatures, and you'll interpret what you think is going on in this world through some environmental storytelling. Scorn as a game is typically pretty silent, relying mostly on ambient noise and its soundtrack to get you through the rest of the game. It's important to note before you actually go into playing Scorn that the game isn't really an action-packed action-adventure game. You're meant to just explore and simply look around at your surroundings. Even when you encounter creatures in the game, you don't really have to attack them. The game isn't really a first-person shooter despite the fact that you do get weapons in the game. Creatures do attack you on sight if you get too close to them, much like territorial animals, but if you leave the area that these creatures appear in, they will generally just leave at some point in time. You can come back through and not have to deal with them at all. However, that doesn't mean that there's nothing for you to kill. There is one boss monster that is required to kill for the in-game story. There are also some enemies that are kind of hard to pass without killing them, and you can kill them as well. Now, since its release, I've done 2 playthroughs of Scorn. One, my initial playthrough, where I played it the way that I thought I should play it, attacking creatures as they attacked me and defending myself. And then a second, more recent playthrough, where I did my best to not kill any creatures at all. I found the playthrough where I was defending myself against creatures attacking me and going after creatures that I thought would be a threat to take a little bit more time and to be a little bit more challenging than the playthrough wherein I just hung back and let the creatures go about their daily lives. My first playthrough took me about 6 hours, my second playthrough taking me only about 4. This is where I should point out that Scorn is not a very lengthy game, and many other games in the horror genre aren't that lengthy either, pointing to Silent Hill and Resident Evil as games that can be beaten in 3 to 4 hours on their own. Although, because Scorn's world is so empty and uninhabited, it is understandable how this short length can definitely feel like you're not getting a full game experience. The environments can be a slight downfall in Scorn. Scorn is the type of game where it doesn't tell you what it wants you to do. You kind of just have to figure it out as you go along. And because of this, the lighting of an environment or the coloring of an environment can sometimes affect if you see where you're supposed to go next or not. Certain parts of the game are fairly maze-like, and it can be hard to find the specific area that you need to go in. However, not hard enough that you'll be looking for longer than a few minutes, but it can definitely get a little bit frustrating if it's your first time playing the game and you need to find a small passageway that you keep passing and not realizing. Although this can be annoying, I do not feel like it takes away from the beauty of the environments or the art direction. Now, while Scorn mainly acts as an atmospheric pseudo-horror game, Scorn is on some level also a puzzle game. The puzzles in Scorn aren't really plentiful, and they aren't necessarily that challenging. However, the puzzles that you do get, I feel, add a little bit more substance to the game rather than you just looking around and walking around and maybe seeing a creature every once in a while, or on occasion maybe getting surrounded by creatures that you need to figure out a way away from. However, because the puzzles of Scorn are not really the main focus of the game, at least not in the way that I perceive the game, I can't really judge Scorn as a puzzle game. I would like to advocate for Ebb Software to make another game in the Scorn universe. Scorn ends on a point where I believe a sequel could be possible. I would like to see what else is in store for this world. Even a prequel where we see what happened before. I do know that there are lore bits for Scorn that used to be written in forum posts on Ebb Software's website for the game. However, at some point in time, these forum posts have been deleted, and so it's not really possible to find them at this current point in time. However, I believe that the art book for the game does have some lore bits if you would like some of those. Point being that I believe that if we were to see these lore bits played out in a game of its own, I feel like that would give people what they feel like they've missed from the Scorn game that we've received as of yet. Nonetheless, as a fan of exploration games, I found myself enamored by Scorn's world, and I found myself trying to take every little thing that I did and saw and trying to compile it into whatever mishmash of an interpretation of a story that I could muster. And it is no small statement to say that Scorn's art direction had an incredible amount of work put into it. Scorn as a game looks incredible and beautiful, and even at some points in time it looks painful like it's supposed to. While the world of Scorn is very alien to us and a lot of the things in game are very violent and gory, it also seems to be very graphic and sexual in nature at the same time. Certain actions taken by the protagonist or happening to the protagonist in the game feel like they're supposed to mix pain and pleasure into one mishmash of emotion. Overall, it is my personal belief that Scorn, in and of itself, is a very good piece of media to consume if you would like to just have a piece of media to interpret, to pick apart and see what certain parts are in there. Although it is important to note that it does also still feel like there is a lot missing from the Scorn universe that we, the players, could take from extra content in this world. In conclusion, there's a few things to say about Scorn before we do our final review. If you're the type of player that enjoys games that have a bunch of action, that have a bunch of crazy things happening all the times and wild visuals flashing in your face, Scorn is definitely not the game for you. However, if you like quiet games, if you like games about exploration, if you like games that do not tell you what you're supposed to do, and you're okay with gore and violence and horror themes, Scorn is definitely a game that is right up your alley, in my opinion. We here at Mediocre Gaming give Scorn a 6 out of 10. Not to say that Scorn is a bad game, it is a very, very good game, but Scorn does have a very specific target audience that it's trying to attract. That is all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If there's anything you would like to say about Scorn, let us know down below. And until next time, drink your water.